we've been battling against the weather for the last few days. It's been really heavy rain and lots of thunder and lightning, but managed to get out yesterday and get the two beams that are going to make the ridge beam joined. We've still not been able to get the bolts that we need to join the two together, and we really need a graded bolt because it's going to be supporting a really heavy load on the roof. But for the time being, as a temporary measure so we can push forward, I've just got some threaded rod the same size as what the bolts are going to be, drilled holes staggered through the two beams, and just with the threaded rod and nuts tightened them up together. So that's now looking lovely, tight and smooth. As you can see behind me, storms are already a brewing today, so I've got about 2 hours before there's going to be another downpour. So today what I want to do is get this beam fixed in place. So you might be wondering why I'm raising the ridge beam up. That's because when we were pouring the ring beam, this gable here behind me was the last bit we did, and obviously I've been rushing it and I haven't got the concrete completely level. So now when you sit the ridge beam on top of it, the ridge beam isn't fully supported on that bearing. It's unevenly distributing the weight on the outer edge. So now I'm just raising the ridge a little bit, packing out underneath, making sure that that point load is evenly distributed on this gable and that the ridge is nice, level and plumb. So we've just been measuring off of the ridge beam to try and get the wall plates positioned into the correct place, because we want them to be parallel so all of the rafters can be the same size and everything be the same angle. But we've come across a bit of a problem, and it's showing our inexperience in building a roof, because we've discovered that we've put the ridge beam in the wrong place. So what we did was we measured from that corner to that corner and the same on the wall behind me to find where the center of the room will be, because we thought that's where you're really going to see if it's straight or not. However, what we hadn't realized was that this front wall is a little bit wonky, and if we have the ridge beam where we've currently got it, then the wall plate is completely off compared to the front wall, and that would mean our roof would come down wonky compared to the building, and obviously we want it to look straight from the outside. So we're going to have to redo it again, and obviously instead of measuring from the internal corners, we're going to measure from the external corners. So it's a bit annoying that we need to redo the work. There was definitely a few expletives being thrown around, but nothing that can't be undone and resolved. And if the roof looks right in the end, all is well. So the ridge beam is now in its new place. Everything has been measured more times than I care for, and it's all now parallel, level, square, plumb, every type you can imagine. So now with everything in the right position, we've spent the last day or so just getting the wall plates fixed. So the first thing we have done is to drill through into the ring beam through the wall plate, and we've chemically fixed some threaded rod through, and that's going to secure the wall plate to make sure that our roof doesn't fly off if we have any big gusts of wind or anything like that. We've actually done it a little bit back to front. What you would normally do is put the wall plate on a bed of mortar first, then once the mortar's gone off, you would then secure the wall plate. But because the hole in the ring beam needed to be wider than the one going through the wall plate, because it's got to have the chemical fixing in there, we didn't want to go through the wall plate with a bigger hole, so a bigger drill bit, sorry. So we took off the wall plates after we'd marked everything out on the ring beam, made the bigger hole in the ring beam and chemically fixed the rods. We then put the wall plate back on with it being supported at the right places where it had been level before, hand tightened the nuts on, and then it was in the right place and it was ready to be mortared and packed in with a kind of semi-dryish mortar, which was a lot more workable and didn't spill out everywhere. So now I'm just whipping around and giving all of these nuts a final tighten now that the mortar is going off.
So we're going to start getting the rafters up later today, but we have got two little jobs that we do need to do before that. The first one being getting the brackets secured onto the ridge beam and then chemically fixing those down. Secondly, we need to replace the threaded rod that's currently tying the two ridge beams together with some big, chunky M12 180 bolts. Those, I had an absolute mare trying to find these. In the UK they're really like 10 a penny, but here in Portugal we really did have difficulty and we ended up sourcing them from France, so we can get those in this morning.
Right, that's the rod chem fixed in. We just need to let it fully go off before we put the brackets on. In this temperature, it's going to take about 40 minutes. So while that's setting, going to get back up on the scaffold and replace the bolts.
Look at this guy. Old
What are you doing?
Tony Montana over there.
Tony Mont? Ah, it's all the concrete powder, which is blasting in my face. We'll scrap that plan. Stupid old me didn't think about the fact that with these bolts we need to recess this because we do not want these ends sticking out anywhere where we're going to be walking on the stairs or walking past it. So that means we need a recessed hole on either side for the washers, the nut and the bolt head to fit within. What I hadn't thought about when we were putting the threaded rod through was the fact that whether I'm using the Forstner bit or a spade bit, both of them need a point to actually be able to hook in and get a nice clean circular hole. But we've obviously already put a hole through with the threaded rod in. So now when I take the threaded rod out, I've got a big hole. This can't grip and therefore it just wants to skid all over the place. So we're gonna have to put that one on hold for now. We've got an appointment in the city tomorrow, so we will get some wooden dowel probably. I can just knock a bit of dowel in just so this has got a point to latch to. So the rafters are going to have to wait because I can just foresee that if we put them rafters up, trying to get those bolts back through and drill holes is going to be tricky and just, yeah, a lot more cumbersome than it needs to be. So for now, I'm going to get back up, get the brackets on, secure the ridge beam.
You look like you were doing press-ups on that angle.
998, 999, 1,000.
You look so small.
Bolt. So we got back from the city a bit earlier than anticipated because of computer problems with Victoria's appointment. So yeah, a little bit disappointing there. However, as a positive, we're back early and we've got a couple of hours. So I'm going to whiz around and get these bolts in because then that means the ridge beam can be finished. We can then get up tomorrow and just crack on straight away with the rafters.
we're not starting quite as early as planned, but time to get some rafters up. This wind is not ideal for gallivanting on top of scaffolding.
You on?
I'm on. Hands free.
So that's taken a bit longer than we wanted to figure that out, but we finally figured out how we're going to do it all, how we're going to measure everything, cut everything, and now we've got one rafter in place. So I'm going to talk you through what we're doing on this second rafter that's going up, show you the whole process, and then once we've done that, I'm going to press on and try and get as many done as possible before there's no more light. Even though all of this wood we've got, the ridge beams, the wall plates, everything, it's all been planed before it came to us, so that straightened most of it out. But the first thing I'm doing is looking to see if on each of these rafters there's a crown, which is kind of where the piece of wood naturally like arches up on the length. We want all of them with the crown on the top if there is one. Like I say, because it's been planed, it's minor, but it still does have it ever so slightly. Okay, so I can see it's this side. So because I want this on the top, where's my pencil? I'm then marking this here. That then tells me when I put this up, this is the top side. We're using bird's mouth cuts for each of our rafters to sit on both the ridge beam and the wall plate. So we need to measure up for each of them, and we're trying to keep it simple and do these measurements in situ. You can do it down on the ground by, you know, finding out the pitch of the roof, taking angles and just measuring it all out, but I think this way is much easier. The first thing I have to do is mark off the plumb line of where the edge of the ridge beam comes. Then I have to mark off where the center of the ridge beam is, because that's then gonna be where the two rafters from the opposite sides meet. Then I need to mark out where my seat cut is going to go for it to then sit down on top of the ridge beam. And then it's a case of repeating that same process on the bottom whilst we've got the rafters sat in place. Also, you might be wondering, how do we know where to put the rafters? Because we're not measuring anything. I don't think I showed you this the other day, but because we were chem fixing the wall plates as well as having the bolts going through the ridge beam, I didn't want any of the bolts to obscure where the rafters wanted to go, and I didn't want any of the chem fixes into the wall plate to be in the wrong place. So because we'd had all the corners measured and everything square, the wall plate square to the ridge beam, we knew that we could measure along at 400mm centers, and that's going to get us our spot. So they're all marked out, so all we have to do is marry up the bottom of the rafter in the position on the wall plate and as well at the top. Right, and now it's just a case of cutting all the cuts and getting it up and in position.
You know the saying, Ricky? A bird in the mouth is worth two in the bush.
A bird in the mouth?
Yeah. A little bit of carpentry banter.
Although today I'm trying to press on and get as much of the front done as possible, I have just fitted the first rafter on the back, and that's just because, you know, like I said before, we don't have straight walls on a stone building. I don't think any stone building does. So I just wanted to get one in and just make sure that all the angles are right, and we've worked everything out okay, and it's sitting perfectly. So now I'm happy to press on and do more of the front. Also, for those of you wondering, because we haven't really shown it, have we treated the rafters like we treated the ridge and the wall plates? The answer is yes, but Victoria did it last week. She came out and spent the better part of a day treating all 30 odd of them. So that's now protected against woodworm, pests, and it also gives it some UV protection. On a separate note, I'm binning off using the jigsaw to cut the birds' mouths because it's just making it so hard to get it accurate. The blade is bending and I'm having to do so much work just to try and rectify it. I'm just going with the good old fine tooth handsaw. I'm going to try that for the rest of them. Oh, get in. Right, handsaw is the way forward.